Hello and welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast, your Nicolas Cage movie review podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Derek, and your other host, Ryan, is right here with me.
That's right. I'm right here with you. And if I sound extra sexy this week, it's because I'm getting over a lung type of illness. So I'm sorry, or that you're welcome, depending on how this plays out. But yeah, I'm happy to be here and happy to review this Cage movie. I was going to say
This,
bad or good, but I didn't want to give away.
this gem of a film,
I mean, I guess you could describe it that way.
this film of all time.
Yeah, it is one of the films of all time for sure.
It is. Yeah. We are talking 2019's Primal, which is an action thriller starring, of course, Nicolas Cage, as well as Famke Janssen and Kevin Durand, directed by Nick Powell. Fun fact about this movie is that the producer Daniel Grodnick had been trying to get this movie made since 1995.
And if you've never heard of this movie, it's not surprising because it had an $18 million budget and only made $228,000.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So apparently 18 people went and saw it in theaters.
Just about.
If you just do the math, that's how it equals out.
And Nick Powell, though, for those who are interested in the Cage connections, he directed Outcast, which we've covered on the show. So if you want to go back and listen to our
A
thoughts on
wonderful
Outcast.
white savior Hayden Christensen, Nick Cage team up.
Yeah, that was way back on episode 15 of the show. That was almost 2 years ago that we covered that one. But those are the only two movies Nick Powell has directed.
Wow.
Otherwise, he's primarily a stunt guy. He has over almost 130 stunt credits.
As coordinator or stunt person?
Stunt coordinator for some of them,
Interesting.
stunts for others. Kind of depends on which ones you're looking at, but a lot of stunt coordinator,
It's
stunt
interesting because the
performer.
stunts in this movie were not exceptional. So I would think if you had a stunt person making a movie, although then we look at like jujitsu, which was heavily leaning on like stunt people in main actor roles, and it didn't do a great job with the stuff either. So,
He did this. He did stunts for the 1989 Batman.
oh yeah,
Yeah, that
nice,
was that was arguably his breakout film. It was his second film and fourth credit. So
nice.
there you go. So yeah, Primal is about, quote, Frank's caught wildlife in the Brazilian jungle include a 400-pound white jaguar. He ships it on the same ship as an arrested assassin. The assassin breaks free and frees the animals.
I cannot. I don't believe that this is an official synopsis
No, that's
because
not how IMDb works.
okay, I was gonna say because that's like it's what a horribly written thing.
But that
Uh,
is the movie.
I mean, it is descriptive of the movie.
Yeah, that's what happens. It's
Usually,
accurate.
I mean, usually, like the descriptions don't just give away the whole plot of what the movie is. It would be a little more coy, like, is shipping an animal that you poached on the same ship as a convicted assassin a good idea? Watch the movie and find out. You know what I mean? Instead of just saying straight out what happens.
Yeah, but this all happens in the first act,
I mean, that's true.
So I don't think it gets super spoilery, but that is what happens. Nicolas Cage plays Frank Walsh, a big game poacher. Famke Janssen plays Dr. Ellen Taylor, who is in the Navy.
It's unclear what she actually does. She's a doctor. That is,
Yeah,
and wears a uniform that resembles a military uniform at one point.
I think she's a lieutenant, I believe. And Loeffler, Kevin Durant's character, is the assassin who is like ex special forces NSA type
He's
guy.
John Wick, basically. Like,
Kind of.
like if John Wick was a worse person.
If he was creepier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. That's the general movie. Ryan, why don't you take us through what we do here?
So usually I take notes throughout the movie, kind of chronologically as they happen in the movie, and we just kind of go through them step by step and relive the experience of watching how good, however good or bad a film is. So It's like we get to experience every movie twice,
as we
for
should.
for better or worse. Let me find the start of my notes here. I
I
think I
will
went.
say, I do love the poster for this movie.
Yeah, this is a poster as bad of a movie or as good as a movie. We'll get into it as it is. Derek will have this poster on his wall at some point.
I don't do that anymore, but I do love the poster. I
He
do.
will have it as his phone background for sure.
I can tell my wife, sorry, you've been replaced by
Yeah, exactly. By a much more engaging photo.
not just any Nicolas Cage picture, the Primal poster.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we only got two title cards in this movie because it actually had a
Yeah.
real studio producing it apparently.
Jesus.
Not like 12 indie studios. Um,
Maybe that's why
so
it took 22 years to make. Nobody wanted to do it. And the guy was finally like, fine, I'll just do it myself.
except then Lionsgate was like, sure, we'll pay for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so the movie opens on a dead goat corpse. So that's fun.
It's gross.
Um,
It's got maggots and stuff.
flies, maggots, yeah, in the Brazil rainforest, and it's like suspended up in the air, hanging from a rope. Um, and then it cuts over to Nick Cage, who is real estate shopping in a magazine. He
As
has
you
a
do.
magazine about real estate shopping, and he's smoking a cigar, which
Woo.
I know whenever Derek sees that in a movie, he's instantly more engaged.
It is a bingo square.
Yes, it is one of our bingo squares as well.
So
Um, then we get the first look at the titular animal of the, well, not the titular, but I guess the animal from the description, the 400-pound white
the
jaguar.
the real star of the show.
I'm just gonna go out and say this: if you're gonna make a movie involving animals to a heavy degree, and they need to be CG, your CG has to be perfect, or it's just gonna break the immersion every time. And
Yeah.
this was
I mean,
not the case.
I'm with you. I'm
This is not
totally
the
with
case.
you. It does
Um,
make me wonder, what do you think they would have done for the animals if they had made this in 1995?
Probably used real animals.
You think?
Yeah,
Oh my God, could you imagine?
that's what they did in 1995. But in any case, this whole opening scene culminates in the animal seeing Nick Cage or smelling his cigar smoke because for some reason a guy that's a poacher and very well equipped to be hunting animals that have an extremely good sense of smell thinks that it's a good idea to be smoking a cigar 10 feet from the corpse of this animal that is supposed to be bait. But lo and
Uh-huh.
behold, the jaguar spots him. There's no idea how. It's impossible.
It's a head scratcher.
Yeah, he's up in the air on like a platform, and he gets attacked, and there's a fight kind of that ensues. But he ends up tranking the animal. We have no idea how he gets this 400-pound animal out of the forest because the next time we see it, it's in a cage on a container, like in a
Nick's just very strong, man.
yeah, barely an inconvenience to get this animal out of this jungle, however deep he is into it. But yeah, my point going to the CG again is that there's really no tension during the scene because it's not really that stressful to watch Gumby attack Nick Cage because
Ouch.
it might as well be Gumby
Oh
because
man.
the CG isn't the worst we've ever seen, but it's not realistic enough to make you feel like Nick Cage is in any danger at any point.
No,
So
that is definitely fair.
that takes a huge amount of the tension out of the movie. Throughout this movie, that is the case. So, um, yeah. So he right up early. It's pretty early on. I scratched the plays an asshole square on the bingo card because he's drinking and driving pretty much right out of the gate.
Hmm.
He's an asshole to a parrot. He's a guy that we're supposed to believe loves animals, but he's actually kind of a jerk to a lot of animals in this movie.
He's a jerk pretty much to everybody, with really
Yeah.
one exception, maybe. And that's
And
debatable.
he's a poacher straight out. Like they don't
Yeah.
call him that. Nobody calls him that in this movie because he's supposed to be the hero.
Well, this is
But
another example, right, of where other people are just bigger assholes in the movie, so we can still root for the hero.
Right. He many times throughout this movie says that this jaguar is the only one that humans have ever seen that's white, and he's captured it to sell it to a zoo illegally. And he isn't poaching animals like, when people think poachers, they think like killing rhinos out
Right.
in Africa for their horns or something like that. But he's poaching animals in the sense that he's capturing them and transporting them to sell to zoos or things like that. And we find out later that his dad worked at a zoo,
Well, he did too.
or he did. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
His dad. Oh yeah, that's right.
But it
He worked
wasn't,
at a zoo.
well, his dad was the mechanic,
Yeah.
right? And he didn't want to be a mechanic. And
And so he
we
went to
do
work at a
find
zoo.
that like while he typically sells to zoos, because the Jaguar is so rare, it's going to go to the highest bidder,
Right. Which is an asshole move.
which is worse. So,
It is. But yeah, he is just, there's no redeeming quality about his character at all in this movie. I mean, he does take care of the animals, and even in the midst of like bad things happening later in the movie, he makes a point to give them water and feed them. But like at one point he talks about how the animals haven't eaten in 12 hours. And so that's not really very cool.
unless maybe that was like overnight,
Yeah,
maybe
I
because
guess.
yeah, they're in a boat most of the movie, so you don't really know what time it
Yeah,
is.
it's true. And for
But
some animals like the snakes, it's okay
right,
for them not to eat for 12 hours, but you have mammals and birds there that
and
probably
baby
need to eat,
monkeys,
baby monkeys and adult monkeys.
you know.
Um, yeah.
But to your point, like yeah, like he's caring about them, but I really think only to the extent to keep them alive and healthy enough to sell.
Right. He doesn't show any real caring towards any of them.
Right. He has his own financial interests, and he's smart enough to know that the healthier the animals are, the more they're worth. So he's
Right.
not dumb, right? But he's not doing it to be nice.
So yeah, he has this like F-350 truck loaded with cages and then a huge like gooseneck trailer off the back full of more cages. And this guy from a local village, I guess, is supposed to be driving him back to the ship.
Mhm.
And the guy says, no, I refuse because of the curse of the jaguar or something like that. And it's talking about how the white jaguar is a man eater and how it doesn't eat any other animals and only eats men.
Right.
Um, in the sense that it would probably also eat women, but humans is what the
Humans.
implication is.
Yeah.
And so Nick's like, fine, I'll do it myself. And he immediately takes like a huge swig of alcohol and gets in the driver seat and drives
Jesus.
it through the jungle. And then I thought we were going to get helicopter credits. I think that's a square on our bingo card, but
Yeah.
we got
Helicopter establishing shots.
drone credit, a drone establishing
Those are
shots
just
instead.
tiny helicopters.
Yeah, they are tiny helicopters. I guess an argument could be made, but yeah, no, they were definitely drone shots. Um, so conveniently, he gets his ship or his boat or his car to the ship and gets this stuff loaded up on the ship, and a bunch of like federal looking people from the U.S. I mean, keep in mind he's in Brazil,
Right.
and a bunch of American people just show up. He's American, but
Unaccompanied, by the way. There's no like Brazilian officials
right.
involved in this at all.
And he's flat out says a couple times throughout the movie he doesn't have papers or like any kind of
No
anything that
permits.
would establish him as somebody who is legally able to do this.
Right.
Um, but yeah, he has all his animals loaded up on the boat, and a bunch of like federal people come up, and in your mind you're if you hadn't read that wonderful description of the movie, in your head you're going, oh, he's about to get busted. No,
Right.
he's not
Yeah.
about to get busted at all. In fact, these are U.S. Marshals that decide that this boat is the best way to transport a federal prisoner off the books.
To me, this is the least believable part of the movie.
It's pretty bad. Yeah, it's
Because
pretty bad.
all of these people got to Brazil. How did they get to Brazil?
They were
Did they fly
looking
coach on
for him or
Southwest?
something.
Like what did they
Maybe they had like a task force sent out to capture him or something, and that's what it was. And they were
but
all part of the task force.
right, but they didn't take a boat like that to Brazil.
No, they probably flew to Brazil. I
Right.
mean,
So
it's a
why not
government
why not fly back?
because it's off the books. They said that. They said that this is not like officially endorsed thing by the government, so they have to transport him back to the United States
So this is
in a more
so
secret method.
so does this get justified because of the end, like the big reveal in the movie then with Freed being
I
like a
guess.
snake, I guess, and that's why it's all unofficial and off the books and sketchy because
Maybe.
it's not legal.
Unclear. But let's
Okay.
move on.
All right.
Um I'm pretty sure in the writing room that's what they said. When
Make
they
it make sense.
somebody questioned this, they were just it's unclear, but we're gonna just keep going anyway.
We have more
Um
pages to write.
so yeah, prisoner transport, he's getting transported on the ship. That's a cargo ship, not like a personnel carrier.
And not even like this is a cargo ship that consistently does sketchy stuff, right? They're doing all this under the table for Nick and things like that. So I don't like how do they pick this ship
Is a good
is another
question.
question.
Lots of good questions. And of course, because Nick Cage is an asshole and a bad person in this movie, um, they have to immediately establish that this prisoner is a worse person. So he immediately starts sexually harassing the only woman in
Ugh.
the entire movie. Well, there might have been another woman in the village, I guess, but the only woman that has any speaking lines throughout the whole movie.
Dude, that I didn't think about it. I was too distracted by other things, but you're right. She is the only character
Yes.
who is a female, a
The
woman in the
only,
movie.
and that's all, that should probably be a bingo card on its own too.
Jesus
One woman
Christ.
in the movie,
Yeah, because
because
there's some background actors, you're right, in the village, right? But they're background actors. These are not credited named
yeah,
characters.
there's literally only one. Even probably in the IMDb credits, there's probably only one woman.
Jesus.
Um, yeah, so he immediately has to sexually harass this woman. So that's great. And yeah, he's getting, he go. This prisoner is instead of like having a muzzle on him or whatever. Remember in Steve Buscemi's character in Con Air where they
Yeah,
had the thing on his face so he
Hannibal
couldn't
Lecter.
talk?
Yeah,
Yeah, why wouldn't they just do that to this guy? Because they know he's a manipulative jerk. Just like, or put a rag in his mouth. It doesn't matter. It's just an off the books thing. You don't have to treat him a specific way. But yeah, so instead they let him harass every single person that is there, including, the only woman in the movie. Um, and we get some kind of exposition once they get on the boat about this endangered jag, like you mentioned, that he was gonna that the zoo requested a black jaguar,
hmm
but that instead he captured this white jaguar that had never been seen before. So instead of going to the zoo, it's just going to go to the highest bidder, which is just
right.
more establishing that he's an asshole that doesn't care about anything.
But again, they're trying to make him the hero. So all of these like special forces guys, like the main one, John Ringer, who's like the leader of these, they're all jerks. Everybody is a jerk
Right.
except
Except there's a
maybe Freed.
kid. There's like a kid who's kind of nice, and there's
Yeah,
a and his dad is kind of a
right.
nice guy too. Um, but okay,
the
so
the
here,
boat
here,
people are nice. The people who
yes,
live and work on the boat are just totally normal people, but everybody else is a
right.
huge jerk.
Okay, so here's the answer to your question earlier about why they can't just fly the prisoner out of here.
Okay.
Because he has a brain
Oh,
tumor.
right. I forgot.
This is how they justified that.
I forgot.
He has a brain tumor that is. I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't assume that maybe that brain tumor has something to do with the fact that he's crazy and murdering people, and the brain tumor instead just keeps him from flying, so that because the altitude would kill him or the temperature or something.
It's the change in air pressure. That's why Dr. Taylor, Famke Janssen's character, that's why she's there. She's monitoring his condition because they're
Right.
worried that bringing him down from the mountains or whatever was going to be enough of a change to cause problems, let alone putting him on a plane. I
Right.
remember, yeah, I had forgotten that.
Then we get to go into drunk Nicolas Cage, which it's crazy to think that this is the same actor that did Leaving Las Vegas because this level of drunk acting is a totally different. If you didn't know it was the same actor, the two performances couldn't be more different.
It's a good point. It's a very good point.
This is more of like a cartoonized, like sitcom version of what drunk people are like, whereas Leaving Las Vegas was more of a realistic portrayal. And I'm sure that was a purposeful choice.
Yeah.
It was a little jarring though, because we don't necessarily see him drunk in a lot of movies or acting drunk, obviously.
Yeah, he drinks a lot, but that's why it's on the
But
bingo
not
card.
acting, but not
But
acting drunk. And
right.
so I think really the big two that come to mind are Leaving Las Vegas and now this movie, and it was a totally different performance. One I didn't like as much. I mean, I understand, I guess, why he did it for this movie because this is a less serious movie. The whole, kind of story of the movie is much less believable. So
Well, that's for sure, right? And I think the character is a very different kind of character,
that's true too.
right?
And
It's
he didn't want to do just the same thing over again, I'm sure.
yeah, I mean I think that's probably fair. And maybe he just approached it from the fact of in leaving Las Vegas, he's literally drinking as much as he can to kill himself, versus in this, he's doing general over drinking,
Right.
which is maybe there's a difference there. I don't know. I don't really drink, so
Yeah. Well, neither of us do, so neither of us are really good to be commenting on that, but hey,
right,
whatever.
yeah.
So of course, immediately as soon as the boat leaves, it's not immediately, it's immediately in the movie, but I think it's supposed to have been a couple weeks or like a week into the journey. Um, I don't know. It's unclear, but
It's hundreds of miles
yes.
off the coast, so I mean, yeah, it does feel like it happens within the next half hour.
Right, but that's only in the movie like viewing order.
Yeah,
It's been a while, but of course in the movie an incident happens. He has a seizure right away. The prisoner does.
because they put him
And
in this cage where he's like chained up or whatever in this cage, and they're giving him his lunch, right? And there's two guards watching him. And of
right,
course, he's down in the bowels of the ship, as far away from everybody else as possible.
and it's kind of unclear whether he's faking the seizure because I mean he's like sweating
Nah,
and
he's
having.
definitely.
I mean he does fake it because he uses it to get away, but like he's having there's physical reactions, not like he's just making a face. He's sweating and has like some things that would indicate a seizure is coming.
I mean, yeah, but if it was real, there's no way he'd be able to snap out of it at the moment he needed to.
Unless that's just coincidence. But I mean, why? How can people force themselves to sweat so that they look more believably like they're having a seizure?
I'm sure some people can. It's
I
called acting,
guess
Ryan.
I've never seen Nicolas Cage force himself to sweat.
No, I don't. I really don't know. Maybe the boat was just really hot. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
it for me it was just that was the part that was a little weird. Like I get the whole faking a seizure to get out of jail thing is a trope that's been used in movies hundreds of times, but usually they like are it's somebody on the ground like spazzing out or something, and which you can act, but you can't force your body to have physical. I mean, maybe somebody can. In general, you can't make yourself sweat or do things that would indicate you're having a seizure. That's why I didn't really understand why they had that. Like, if he's faking it, then why is that happening? Anyway,
yeah, no, I mean it's interesting. So
just
the alternative is that he just got lucky and had a seizure at the right moment.
or like it ended at the exact right time. Or maybe he truly wasn't feeling well and he was seasick or something and used that to his advantage. I mean, it's hard to say.
Maybe I do find it extremely unlikely that a guy with his training would be seasick.
Right. I agree. Yeah,
But
that one's the whole thing is a little weird. But yeah, so he starts having a seizure and well, it seems like he's having a seizure. And so one of the guards opens the door and you're like, "Don't go in there with your gun, guard." And he does not. He hands his gun to the next guard and goes in and sees that he starts doing what I believe is proper medical stuff where he's trying to keep them from choking on their own tongue, which is something that happens during a seizure. But he reaches his finger into the mouth, which is not something you're supposed to do because when someone's having a seizure, their muscles can clamp, and immediately that's what happens. That's why they tell you like put your wallet in their mouth or something like that, so that so that they have something to bite down on.
mhm.
Um, and maybe I'm way off. If we have medical people that are listening, feel free to correct us. But that's my understanding of it. And
That's what I'd heard too.
yeah, but using your finger is not generally, I think, a great way to do that.
I mean, it just doesn't sound like a good idea.
No, not during the seizure. Like, I think
Yeah.
if you're trying to keep them from choking on their own tongue, it would be like after the seizure if you're getting ready to do CPR or something. But yeah, he sticks his finger in there, and of course it gets bitten, and the guy's like getting his finger ripped off. So he's screaming and has the other guard come in, the guy with the gun. And so, of course, the prisoner is able to grab the gun and blow the guy's head off with it, and then kill the other guard and get free. He takes their keys and frees himself, as you could probably predict would happen.
And he's now like armed to the teeth. He's got like three or four different guns at this point, plenty of ammo.
Right. And so they find out what happened, the other people, the U.S. Marshals and stuff on the ship, and so they push everybody to. There's like this one spot on the ship that has only one entrance basically, and so they push everybody in there and say this is the safest place for everybody to be. We're going to take teams out and go, clear the ship and find him.
Right.
And immediately Nick is like, well, my animals haven't eaten in 12 hours, so I've got to go. And he said, you're not going, you're staying. And so, immediately they figure out that the animals have also escaped.
Because
Not escaped,
well,
they've been let out.
because Nick does whatever he wants.
Right. Yeah, he
So
doesn't listen to anybody because he's a jerk. And yeah. So there's a few people that aren't the US Marshals that they take with them. Namely, I think the people that run the engine
yeah,
and
Scuddy and what was his name? Jerome, I think.
I guess, yeah, but then they
Yeah.
also take some dude that goes into the kitchen immediately. I don't remember who that guy was.
Yeah, people need food. So they get
Oh,
the
they take him to the
chef,
kitchen. Yeah, the chef to the kitchen. And
Delgado,
so,
I think.
yeah, so as soon as he gets, like, he is supposed to be going in there with an armed guard, but instead he just like opens the door, goes in and locks it behind him, and the guards can't get in there. And he realizes very quickly that there's monkeys in there.
And there's a little thing that we were told earlier,
Yes.
right? That the monkeys have babies.
Yeah, so when the kid, there's Nick is kind of, I didn't put befriend a minor until the closer to the end of the movie, but he does kind of befriend a minor in this movie. There's
Yeah.
this kid that's interested in the animals and interested in being a poacher like Nick Cage. And so
So
Nick Cage is
sweet.
telling him about yeah. Nick Cage is telling him about the animals, and when he gets to the monkeys, he said, don't go near the monkeys, because the mom will rip your face off if you go near her babies or something along those lines. So
Yeah, rip the
immediately
skin off your face.
somebody's getting killed by these monkeys at some point. They don't set something up like that without it paying off later. So yes, the chef goes in there and he's like immediately a dickhead to these monkeys and
Yeah,
like
he's really
grabs
mad that they're in his kitchen.
yes, and he grabs one of the babies and I guess he's gonna like squeeze it to death or something. Like he's gonna like pop it like a pimple or something. I don't really know what he was gonna try and do, but the mom sees it and immediately goes ape shit and kills him.
Yeah,
Or maybe
man.
maybe I should say monkey shit. I don't know. Ape shit might be offensive when I'm talking about. I don't know. I don't want to offend the monkeys.
It's primatist. But yeah, and so we get to see like blood on the little window into the kitchen, and the guy's trying to still break in and can't get in or whatever, right? So
And they watch him die, basically.
yeah,
So we do find out that Nick is former military at this point,
right.
which is
Yeah,
interesting. I don't think that is a bingo card for us. Unfortunately, I think that
it
says
is.
current military.
No, just government or military
Nick
employee.
is a government or military employee, not Nick
Oh,
was a government or military employee.
I
So
think we've crossed that off for former before,
have
but
we? I don't know.
yeah.
We didn't cross it off on this one, but we can for sure. It doesn't change anything. Um, I do want to shout out to one thing in this movie. And
Okay.
we've had this in other Nick Cage movies done the wrong way. When talking about snakes,
Yeah,
do you know where I'm going with this?
I'm not sure yet.
Uh, People love to refer to snakes as poisonous.
Oh,
And it's happened in many Nick Cage movies, maybe not many, several that we've watched. They've talked about the poisonous snakes. In this movie, he says the snakes are venomous, which is factually true and something that I appreciate when movies get right.
yeah,
Because when you say a snake is poisonous, in a movie, all it does is reinforce in everybody's mind that watches that movie that that's the correct descriptor. But there's very important differences between venomous and poisonous. So in my mind, I want to commend them for that because that was a nice thing to see in a movie where I would have expected them to say poisonous,
sure.
instead. So
Right.
I'm glad that they used the correct terminology for that.
Well, that's good. So yeah, so for the people back home, it's poisonous if you eat it, right?
And
And
yeah, if you eat it and die, it's
it's
poisonous.
poisonous.
If you get bit by
Bit.
it or it's in some way injected into you,
Right.
it's venomous.
Right.
Yeah, so big difference. So if a snake is poisonous, do not eat it and you'll be safe.
But I think it's probably a
Not
good
that we
idea just to
condone eating
not,
snakes, but
yeah, just don't have snakes bite you. I think it's probably a good
yeah,
idea too, just in general. It's a good
don't
rule to
knock
live
it till you
by.
tried it.
I'm good.
Um, my next note says this engineer is an idiot. I don't remember what that's in reference to.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't remember. I mean, he says like he's very specific about his engines, and he doesn't believe that anybody else knows what they're doing or whatever. But
Yeah, I'm not
he's
quite, I can't remember what that is, what
he's
that
very
was in reference to.
stereotypical, like grizzly old engineer.
Yeah.
You know,
And of course, when you have snakes in a movie like this, somebody's going to get bit.
yeah,
So, and
typically.
somebody does. It's the dad of the kid that Nick has befriended, who
Hmm.
is thus far seemed like a pretty nice guy.
Yeah.
You know, pretty normal compared to most of the other people in this movie.
Hmm.
But yeah, he gets bit by a fertilance, I think they said it was.
I don't
Um,
remember
or
what
no, he
type of
said
snake.
Bushmaster, I
Okay,
think. Which is a venomous snake, yeah, and very dangerous.
not
And
good.
yeah, but somehow this guy manages to survive for a very long time throughout this
Even
movie.
though there's no anti-venom
No
on the boat.
anti-venom. Like I think at
And
some point he gets an IV.
yeah, but Nick says, he says, even if I had the anti-venom, which I don't,
There's only
there's
a
still only a
20%
20% chance.
chance.
So I'm like, wait a minute. If it's a 20% chance with the anti-venom, what's the chances without it? It's got to be like nothing, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. Somehow he's like on the edge of death the entire rest of the movie. And
he
spoiler
pulls
alert,
through.
he survives at the end somehow, even though like the Coast Guard that shows up at the end doesn't probably have Bushmaster anti-venom. That's not like a normal thing they need in their arsenal.
I
But
mean,
whatever.
maybe there's a lot of Bushmaster snakes in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, there's not a lot from what I
Ever
understand. I
since
mean, I'm not a
Samuel L.
biologist,
Jackson's
but
plane, he
they've been populating. Yeah. So yeah, then we get our first Jag attack,
God.
which is great.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not going to go into it because it's what you would expect. It's a CGI Jaguar attacking and killing somebody. So
I have a question for you.
sure, hit me.
What do you think the reasoning was that Loeffler, right? Loeffler, why do you think he released all of the animals?
I would assume as a distraction.
Okay. It just seems like it added a level of risk to even himself that was unnecessary.
It does if he does, but he would be the one that would like see where people have gone or where the animals have gone. And so as long as he stays away from those areas, then he's fine. But yes, I think having a man-eating jaguar that's loose and you have no idea where it is on the ship, potentially a problem for you as well, yes.
Right? Okay.
But also, why release the tapir? There's a tapir that they say is the prey of the jaguar.
Yeah.
Nick talks about that, but it's a pretty harmless like think of releasing a cow on a ship. What kind of distraction or danger does that cause?
Well, that's kind of my point, right? It's like I don't like, does he understand what the monkeys are going to do? Does he understand what the jaguar is going to do? Is he an expert on these things? Or did he just open a bunch of crates?
Right. Did the parrots need to be released? Like what? Actually, he keeps the birds in the cages, I think, because
Yeah.
there's a scene later with the birds.
Yeah. But it just feels like it was a weird use of his time when he obviously has a specific plan in place.
Yeah, it was it. Yeah,
And later, of course, it comes back to bite him. Uh,
yeah. I think the idea is that it's a distraction. There's supposed to be a distraction, like because otherwise they could just do a clean sweep of the ship fairly easily and find him.
okay.
But the animals make it so that they can't have a clean sweep of the ship because they're dealing with trying to wrangle these animals back into cages or shooting them.
Hmm.
Not that I can do shooting
Fair enough.
animals, but in this circumstance, it seems like there is reason to.
Well, I mean, look, if you're stuck in a confined space with a jaguar, and it wasn't your fault that the jaguar is in this position, right? I mean, you got to
Right.
do what you got to do, right? Arguably, the jaguar never should have been on the boat in the first place, but that's a separate problem only for our buddy Walsh.
Right. And
So
arguably killing the jaguar is better than the jaguar living a life in confinement from whoever bid on him the highest and may not have proper care or anything like that,
that's a fair point. It's a
Just
fair
saying.
point. Yeah, no, it's a fair point.
Um, yeah, so the jag attack happens, and after that happens, they finally get the guy that got bit by the snake back to the safe zone
Right.
where they have medical stuff set up, I guess. And this is where Nick, the poacher, begins to train the doctor on how to treat a snake bite.
Well, she's a psychologist and a neurologist, right? So she's not.
She's
Now,
also a
I
doctor.
don't believe. Yeah, it's so dumb, but God, it's so dumb.
Like, I get that being a poacher may have given you some insight into how to treat snake bites because it's a real danger of something that could happen to you. But I do think most medical professionals would have some understanding of how to treat a snake bite.
You would think so, especially if
And
there's no anti venom. Then what are you gonna do? You're just gonna do normal
well, here's
triage
my
type
thing.
stuff.
I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a guy that has basic medical knowledge from Boy Scouts, right? But if somebody's going to get bit by a venomous snake, I know there's no anti-venom, and I'm out in the ocean where I don't know how long it's going to be till that person get treated. I'm going to fucking put a tourniquet on that thing as quick as I can and stop that blood from flowing to the rest of his body. And sure, he might lose the leg,
Right.
but he's going to be alive. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
maybe again, if there's any medical professionals out there and I'm way off base, please tell me why this is not a good idea so that if this ever happens to me, I don't do that.
Well,
But
it is the reason not to do it is to not prematurely lose the limb. But I think in the situation that we're talking about here,
yeah,
the odds of survival are so low that I think that's the risk that you
worth the
just have to
risk. Yeah,
take,
I'd rather live
right?
with one leg than be dead.
Right.
Yeah. Um, so I can't remember the exact scene, but at some point there's like a shootout, or they start shooting at they spot the guy and start shooting at him or something. But the gunshots all have a silenced sound effect. Like, you know, that very specific
Yeah.
silenced gunshot sound effect. None of the guns on the ship have silencers, nor do they have any reason to have silencers on them. This isn't a tactical mission.
I just thought it was bad sound mixing,
It must have been. It was just
you
super
know.
weird.
Yeah.
And it's not just one gunshot, it's like a bunch of gunshots. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
I
Also, they're suppressors, not silencers. I'm only using the term silencer because that's what movies call them. I'm feeding into the whole
that's
poisonous
what
venomous thing
that's
again.
what the GoldenEye game called it.
Yeah.
Okay, when you got the silenced PP7.
It's a
So,
misnomer to call a gun silent, a silencer, a silenced. Anyway, um, so at some point there's a standoff that happens where the prisoner has the kid
mhm.
and Nick has a trank gun pointed at him because that's the gun he uses through part of this movie. A tranquilizer,
It's for the animals.
right? But
Yeah.
it because of the circumstances,
Right.
you know. And so he has it pointed at this guy, but then the Jaguar shows up. And so now Nick has a decision to make whether he's going to trank the guy or the Jaguar.
Hmm.
And so instantly he tranks the Jaguar and, you know, the guy gets away, of course. Um,
No,
and so,
he shoots the guy. That's the thing. So he
oh,
shoots
yeah, he shot the prisoner instead of the
and
Jaguar.
he
That's
like
right.
jumps and leaps on the
Yeah,
kid as the jaguar is leaping through the air, and we find out that Nick like hit the body armor or something
right.
of
And it was
Waffler.
a bad shot because he's a
Yeah.
poacher. He's not a trained marksman.
Well, and he's also not used to shooting humans with like armor and things like that on, he's shooting defenseless animals that
True.
don't know he's there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. Like a real man.
right,
Yeah. And so we get right after this, we get our first look at like the twist for the movie and what's going to happen. This guy that I thought they described him in the beginning as an attorney.
Yes. Yeah, he is supposed to be the US attorney
Right.
who's
Um,
prosecuting.
one of the other military guys gets a shot on the guy they've been hunting and it like has him in his sights and is getting ready to shoot him. And then the attorney guy shows up and shoots that military guy in the back and lets the guy get away.
Yeah.
Because he's been saying this whole movie that they need to take him alive. It's really important they take him alive. And so the attorney guy murders one of the US military guys to save the prisoner dude.
Which is only part of the twist, but was still a little surprising.
Right.
I will give it that because he's giving off this guy gives off very like beginning of the Hobbit Bilbo Baggins energy.
Agreed.
you know
Non-violent energy, but eventually it gets to violence.
Yes.
And so at some point, I can't remember the circumstances, but the bad guy captures Nick. and he puts him in the cage for the where the jaguar is, or where the jaguar
Yeah.
was the cage designed for the jaguar, and he has him chained up to the cage and has a rope tied around his neck.
Hmm.
And apparently that's how he decides to torture him and like try and get information from him, which seems like a terrible plan for torturing somebody because you're damaging their windpipe. How are they going to communicate with you? The information you Nick had hid
Yeah.
a star chart for navigation
Right.
of the
Because
ship
Loeffler destroys all the technical equipment.
and kills the people that were piloting the ship.
Right. So the idea is that the ship's caught like going in circles. You couldn't navigate it, right? And so he's going to take a lifeboat and
Right.
needs
And
to be able to
and get
navigate.
away out of here. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Nick had hid the star chart, which is how you would navigate without any kind of technology. Um, And so he puts this rope around Nick's neck and pulls it around the bars. And so he's just like tightening it to strangle Nick to try and get information where the star chart is, navigational chart. And I can't remember if Nick actually tells him or not. He doesn't
He
tell him at this
does.
point. He does eventually.
Oh, later.
So after the rope thing isn't working, the psychopathic guy, because we haven't seen enough to establish that he's crazy, he goes up to this cage with a bunch of birds in it, exotic birds, and he starts talking about how pretty these birds are, and puts a gun up to the cage and just blasts the shit out of one of these birds. And he's just going down the line and starting shooting the birds, and Nick is screaming to stop shooting the birds. Not because he cares about the birds, but because he cares about the money he'll get from selling the birds.
Yeah, each one's worth tens of thousands of dollars, apparently.
Right. And so he tells him after that where the star chart is after he killed a couple of the birds, I think. But
Yeah.
what a way to torture somebody. You're just going to blast innocent birds in front of them.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, that's where we have to make sure Loeffler looks like the bigger asshole.
Right.
Right.
And that was a way to do it for sure.
It worked.
And I will say the CGI on that was not bad. I
No,
think
that looked
that
fine.
that was believable that he was really blowing up birds with a gun, point
Yeah.
blank gunshot.
Hmm.
Um, my next note is befriends Minor because he starts like really communicating with these kids. The attorney guy I think comes in and lets him loose from the cage because
Yeah.
the crazy dude, instead of shooting Nick and going, he left him alive and went to go get these navigational charts. And I guess Nick gets brought back to the brig where the kid is, and he's talking to the kid about his dad and befriending him essentially enough to at this point it was to the point where yes, I would consider this befriending rather than just being friendly.
Right.
Um,
I agree.
yeah, yeah, and so I guess the kid gets taken hostage yet again after this because I have
At least twice. Yeah.
kid hostage is my next note. Um, and Nick. Okay, so I have arrow through shoulder as my next note. I can't remember the exact circumstances that the arrow through the shoulder happens.
Yeah. So what
Nick
happens
has
is
a
they set
hunting
up.
bow.
Right. So he and Famke Janssen are going to like draw out Loeffler. She's going to be the bait, right? And he's going to hunt because that's what he's good at. And so yeah, so he's got this big bow, and he gets one shot off, but it's like it's in the shoulder. It's way off center, and so
And the
Loeffler's
attorney guy shows up
right.
and is threatening to shoot Nicolas Cage for trying to kill
After just
the
saving
bad guy.
him
Yeah.
just a few scenes earlier.
So I think this is when he takes Famke hostage, right?
Yes.
And so he has both the kid and her now. And I do want to say another thing that I thought was good in this movie is that the way they handled that arrow. So if you're not familiar with hunting arrows and humans being shot by them, the way they work is they have like a broadhead, or like a head that is wider at the end than
Mhm.
it is at the tip. So you can't, if you pull it back through,
Mm.
you'll do more damage ripping it through than you would just pushing the arrow with the little feathery. I know the name of them, I just can't think of it. The
Yeah.
pulling the shaft of the arrow through. I thought that was good. They handled it that way. Although
Yeah.
some people would say that you should just break the arrow in half and then pull it through that way. But I
I
mean,
mean, I guess it depends on what the arrow's made out of,
yeah, because carbon
right?
fiber arrows, stuff like that, it's not going to be super easy to break. Plus, it could leave shards of
It could.
arrow in you.
And he can't trust anybody around him either. So he's trying to do things with like one hand. He's still holding a gun, right? Stuff like that. So I think he's just taking the quickest,
Yeah,
like safest route for his situation.
right. And it's a non-lethal shot. It's through like
Right.
the meat in his shoulder area.
Yeah. It
Not
hurts, but he'll be fine.
right, exactly. So my next note is dead NSA guy. I don't remember even how that happens.
Well, because Loeffler kills him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Loeffler kills the NSA guy.
Which because it's like it's funny, the enemy of my enemy kind of situation. Like
Yeah,
everyone's just like, kill this freed dude. Nobody likes him, nobody can trust him. Let's get him out of the way.
right. Yeah, so
Which I
he
thought was
dies.
funny. But
Um,
what I don't understand though is why Freed let Nick Cage loot out of the cage.
right. And then
You could have
only to
just
immediately threaten to kill him.
right, like you could just left him in there. He can't see that you came into that room. You could have
Right.
just left.
Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't like
Mm,
he was in immediate danger. So if part of him was like, well, I don't really want to kill him if I can avoid it, he wasn't going to die. So very
right.
odd.
So there was something else that was touched on. You know, remember earlier we talked about the monkey conversation with the kid,
Yeah.
and how the monkeys would like rip off your face skin or whatever. Well, also in that conversation, Nick talks about these darts that he has. He's apparently prolific with a blow dart,
Hmm.
and he coats these darts in this like tranquilizer powder type of thing. So when he shoots these monkeys with these tranquilizer darts, after a couple seconds, they just kind of fall over and they're fine, but
Right.
they're like knocked out,
They're paralyzed but
paralyzed.
conscious,
That's what it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is
Paralyzed but
key.
conscious. Yeah.
They're not asleep,
Right. Um,
which again, kind of awful.
really terrible. Really terrible. Like I'd
Like,
rather he just trank some.
right?
But
Like,
also worth keeping in mind that these monkeys are like 3 pounds or like
right.
5 pounds.
They're small.
Right. So in your head when you hear this, you're like, okay, this is going to come back later in the movie, but there's no way it could be on a human because it would take an inordinate amount of this powder to do the same thing.
Right.
Turns out, no, it actually doesn't take that much more powder. He hits them with like 3 darts.
I think it's three, but it does take a lot longer for it to work.
It does. And so he hits them with these 3 darts, and then they get in like this fist fight where people are getting stabbed and like arms broken and stuff like that.
Nick's getting
Um,
his ass kicked.
Nick's getting his ass kicked, but the paralyzed. Yeah, this guy is an insane fighter. Apparently, he's literally like 1v1ing uh federal marshals, like U.S.
Hmm.
marshals that have had martial arts training and are in very good shape. Big guys.
Well, this is a
Um,
special forces assassin dude, so I feel like he has at least the same level of training.
that's probably true, but it's just crazy how much better he is than literally everybody else.
Yeah.
But yeah, he beats the shit out of Nick. But yeah, the paralyzing thing starts kicking in, and so Nick hangs him up from the ceiling by his foot
Hmm.
with a rope.
Yeah.
And then guess what? Oh, there's a knife fight in there. I forgot. There is a knife fight because apparently that needs to happen. But
Melee
yeah,
weapon.
apparently the Jaguar decides to show up right at this point. And it's very reminiscent of the first scene in the movie where the goat is hung up by the rope. But instead,
Yeah.
it's this paralyzed guy.
It's a nice bookend.
Yeah, where he gets eaten alive by the Jaguar. Spoiler alert. Probably wasn't alive very long, I'm going to assume. But still not a great way to go. Um, yeah. So then the movie, right before this all happens, the plan for the psycho guy was to pretend that he was one of the people on, like a worker on the ship, and that they
Right.
had these animals get free, and these animals apparently killed all these people with guns somehow.
Hmm.
They used guns to kill these people and shoot the animals shot all these people, and he was going to get away with this in this helicopter.
I think his thought process was probably as soon as I can get on that helicopter, I'm fine. If they figure it out later, I'll be gone by then.
Yeah, he'll fly the helicopter or whatever
Yeah.
himself. Yeah, and so that was the plan. So shortly after the Jaguar, well, we don't really know how long after. I can't imagine it was that long after, but the guy after the Jaguar eats the guy, the Coast Guard or whoever shows up, and they're asking about what happened. And of course, when they're questioning about these endangered animals that Nicolas Cage has on the boat, and they start asking for papers, as a normal government entity would do, Famke, who is a lieutenant in the Navy, tells these people, "Oh, I saw his papers personally, even though I'm a doctor and not somebody that would be dealing with poachers' papers, and they got destroyed by the animals.
No, no, no. Loeffler
Or
Loeffler destroyed them.
Loeffler destroyed them.
Yeah, she
Right.
concocts a nice little story there.
And so this poacher gets off scot-free to go sell his Jaguar to the highest bidder because he fed a government prisoner to a Jaguar and let a bunch of people die because or his animals killed a bunch of people on the boat.
Well, I don't blame him for that part because I do feel like he had it all under control. Like,
Except that those animals wouldn't have done that if they were in the wild where they're
no,
supposed to be.
I know, but I blame him for a lot of things. He's a bad person. I don't blame him for the assassin unlocking the cages. I don't blame him for that. But it doesn't really matter because the idea here, right, is throughout the movie, Walsh and Dr. Taylor are having these conversations about how he's a bad man.
Yes.
He admits it. He's got no problem saying it. He's not trying to be a good person, right? But he likes her. So he's going to be a little, just a little bit nicer, just one notch higher, and try not to let too many people die. Certainly not the kid,
Right.
right?
And the
And
dad is still alive at this point, by the way. You see him being hauled off somehow.
somehow he's alive. We don't,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and so because he didn't let them all die,
He deserves to be rewarded by selling his illegal animal poachings.
which, by the way, if this movie had taken place in the 80s, for example, then fine, right? But this is a 2019 film. These are all digital records,
Yeah.
right? If he had the permits, US permits for this, there would have been digital records. So her vouching for that, she could lose her entire career if somebody wanted to double check this.
But Derek, you're forgetting about this. Now that he's done this for her, or she's done this for him, now she can give him her number and tell
That's
him to
right.
call her.
That's right.
So
And
now
he's going to go get a job at the zoo near where she lives.
right now she can get laid. So it's all good.
It's all fine.
Yeah, it's all
Yep.
good. The one woman in the movie, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So that's it. That's how
That's
the movie ends. She gives him her number and says to call her, and I'm assuming that they make love and get married and poach lots of beautiful animals together.
That must be what happens. Yeah, the kid and his dad live. Most of the crew, I guess we skipped the part. Most of the crew left. They abandoned ship in one of the lifeboats.
Yeah.
So most of the movie, like half the cast is just gone.
Yeah, and if you're asking what happened in the lifeboats, it's a good question, but it is covered in the movie. We just didn't talk about it. At one point, the attorney guy goes and shoots all the boats.
Well, there's only apparently there's only two. So
yeah,
the crew
on this
takes
huge
one,
cargo ship. Yeah.
and then they blow up. They destroy the other one, and then there's this special one
secret. There's a secret third one that only the captain knows about or something
that they keep as far away from the side of the boat as possible. Apparently, which seems like a horrible place for it to be.
It's a weird situation altogether. Yeah.
If the boat were going down, you'd have to go to the bowels of the ship to get the lifeboat. Just seems that a single person can't carry. Seems like a terrible idea. Maybe that's normal though. I don't know. Anybody out there working on like these cargo ships? Is that real? Is that where they would keep it? That seems kind of crazy to me. But that's the movie.
Yeah, and so usually after we watch these or after we talk about these movies, we go through some of the reviews for these movies. So Derek, would you like to start with the 1 star or the 10 star?
Let's start with the 1 star and we'll end on a high note.
Okay, sounds good. Let's see, 1 star. This is not a movie, but a cartoon. Animated animals and fake ones and bad ones. No real suspense when Daffy Duck is attacking Nicolas Cage during the first minutes of this movie. Okay, fair. I've never seen a Nicolas Cage film I didn't like until now.
Oof.
That's rough. Who fact checks your military uniforms? The unrestricted line officer naval aviator wings are always displayed above any medical officer insignia on the uniform. Child's play. Pay for a military advisor next time so you don't look like fools in the future. I mean, that's a valid criticism, but probably the least necessary criticism of this movie you could possibly give.
Well, and look, I know there's also some rules around how close to real those types of uniforms are allowed to look. And so
Yeah,
since it's not portraying real people in real events, maybe it has to look less real. I don't know that
maybe.
that's true.
I don't know. This person said Famke Janssen is in All You Need to Know to Avoid It Like the Plague.
That's
Ouch.
just mean.
Yeah, I mean X-Men was really good. She was in that. Um, Sorry, but this sounds totally stupid. I think it's time for Nicholas to get retired. He became a joke on all over the social media. He used to be a good actor. I feel pity for him. P.S. I rated 1 because I ain't find neither 0 nor -1 nor even -10 yet. Worst Nick Cage film ever. Everything about this film was unrealistic. First of all, zoo animals from most nations are not captured. Perhaps there obviously had to be at first, yet I guarantee that all animals in zoos anywhere were born in zoos. I'm gonna
That's
say
not
that's not
true.
true. No
That's not.
municipal zoo is going to spend millions to capture an exotic panther in Brazil. I highly doubt that the most powerful nation in the world would transport their most wanted terrorists on a small freighter when the U.S. Navy maintains prison vessels designated to do that task. Fair, okay. This
But to the earlier point,
it
right?
was
This is
supposed to be a
all.
secret.
Yeah, this was also not this was a like a black ops thing, and the guy was
This
lying.
this movie was ridiculously stupid. I have enjoyed other films with Nick Cage, but I think his career might be coming to a close. Attempts at typecasting, usage of Michael Imperioli, and usage of a female actor to play the Navy chick in charge, in reality would be male SP and U.S. Marines. All I can say is this: I'm a veteran. This is among the most insipid movies I've ever seen.
A woman's not allowed to have that role. I don't know that I can subscribe to that nonsense. Liking the actor not as subjective, but I don't I don't think that's a job that a woman's not allowed to have.
It's a weird review, yeah. Okay, on to the 10s out of 10s. Perfectly watchable and entertaining. Is it smart? Sometimes. Does it matter? Does it make sense? Probably not. But does it not try to insult the viewer's intelligence? And with some good acting and dialogue, this one is far better than the stupid big budget ones. I don't know if watchable is a good reason to give a movie 10 out of 10 stars, but
Right. It's a good reason to not give it a one.
yeah, yeah. Why all the hate on Nick Cage? This movie is a fun romp. Sure, it harks back to the late 80s and 90s action drama thrillers. That said, everyone can act. There's a few surprises during an action-packed thrill ride, and ending ties lots of things up nicely. Some good dialogue from Cage and other leads helps. The white and black hats never behave cartoonishly, and most of the script is within acceptable bounds of plausible belief. I mean, again, I don't think these are things that would justify giving it a 10 out of 10. Saying a movie is acceptable does not mean it's a 10 out of 10 movie to me, but
I mean,
Cage
maybe
is,
it's like me when I go like and I have to like rate the server at a restaurant or something like that. Like you have to do a really bad job for me not to give them their 5 stars or whatever it is,
that's fair.
because I don't want someone to lose their job.
Yeah. Old school action. Cage was having fun working on this movie, which made it better. Still B movie that you shouldn't think while watching, and it could have been far better with a bigger budget, but they did their best. Also, the actors were really good. Okay.
Fair
I
enough.
mean, that's yeah. I mean, I'm glad some people liked it. I don't think a lot of those reasons are valid for giving it a 10 out of 10, but I just think maybe we have different scales. But
Maybe.
and for the record, this is rated a 4.9 out of 10 on IMDb with 12,000 reviews.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's do this. So we have our rating system. We have 2 scales, caginess and quality. There are 20-point scales because there's a lot of movies to cover. So we wanted to be able to have some precise ratings. Um, we'll start with we always start with quality. We always do quality first. I mean, the movie's fine. It's certainly not like great, and it's maybe not even quite good. So I'm kind of in the house of like giving it an 8,
Yeah, I was thinking at 9 because it's definitely on the lower side of average.
right? Okay.
So I'm good with that.
So a 9 for you and an 8 for me there. Then we have caginess. There's a bit, I don't really think he's super cagey in it because
No, not at all.
he's kind of just trying to be like Mr. Tough Gruff guy. So I think it's a pretty low caginess thing, maybe like a 3.
Yeah, I would probably. Yeah, I think I was thinking a 4, but either
Okay.
way, we're right in the same ballpark.
There we go. So we have an 8.5 on quality and a 3.5 on caginess. I think that's fair. And then of course we have to figure out which movie is going to join the Wheel O Cage. So this movie is going to come off our wheel and get replaced by Vengeance, a Love Story. That
Interesting. Okay.
that joins our wheel. So to find out which Nicolas Cage movie we're going to talk about next time on the show, you can go to comingofcage.com, follow us at Coming of Cage, and watch our Wheel O Cage spin as well as our Cage O bingo and see if either of us got a bingo for this movie, Primal, episode 62. Ryan, anything else for Primal?
No, I pretty much got everything off my chest that I wanted to say about this movie.
I think that's totally fair. I am going to end things with a little plug for my new podcast series, Love and Slashers, that I'm doing with my wife, Ray, who used to do Screen Heroes with Ryan and I. We're covering slasher horror films from Halloween, Friday the 13th, and A Nightmare on Elm Street just to start. So you can go and check that out,
And when you guys do
loveandslashers.com.
vampire movies and you do What We Do in the Shadows, I will 100% guest star in that.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
It's not a horror movie, but it is a vampire movie.
You
So
heard it here, folks.
that's my promise to the viewers.
A little Screen Heroes reunion
That's right.
possibility. That would be fun. I did love doing Screen Heroes with you both. So that is going to be it for us this week. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Derek. That is Ryan.
It is, and we'll see you next time. Tongues are hard.